Hello, Zach.
Hello, Jeff.
Finally got you on to discuss the decline and fall of superhero movies. And
Ah, let's do it. Let's do it. I wasn't ready for that, but I can be ready for that. If if that's where we're at.
I don't know. All I'll say is I watched Superman. It was all right. It was
Oh
okay.
yeah.
And then I watched Fantastic Four, and I have never been so completely underwhelmed for.
Uh, See, we just got back. Okay, so I guess we are talking about the rise and fall of superhero movies, which is
Yeah.
great. We just got back from this week. We watched Supergirl. And I had a great time. I usually have a great time with James Gunn superhero movies. Like James Gunn movies and Spider-Man movies are kind of like they've yet to fail for me. But I had a blast. I don't really know anything about Supergirl, so that was kind of new for me. I took my kids. We all had a good time. So, um,
I think in general, and I think there's the DC side of things, which doesn't seem to be marching to a very I don't say agenda. It feels like it feels like at least they have a little more room to kind of be their own thing.
yeah.
Where Fantastic Four was, it was in a hurry to get to a certain point,
Uh,
and it was just like all the goodness that this could have been. What I was looking for was something on the lines of like The Incredibles, like
hmm.
the opportunity, like the it was set before them. The template was set before them.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
actors are great. It's like
yeah. I remember the trailers for that movie getting me really excited, and then it just, yeah, yeah.
all they had to do, and what they, and I understand they don't want to do the origin story, but what really should have, in my mind, should have ended, spoilers for those that haven't seen it yet, is it should have been about, it's just started and been about the mole man and ended with Invisible Woman um, now become an ambassador. That
Hmm.
would have been a good stopping point. And then you could have the superhero people doing the superhero stuff, more stretchy stuff, more clobbering time stuff, and Johnny Storm being other than just being, I don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah, yeah,
It's,
yeah, yeah.
at any time they can say, you know what, we haven't been to space for a long time. I'm pouty. Oh, we get to go into space, and then within 15 seconds, we're in millions and billions of light years away in Galactus's backyard.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I yeah, well, I think you've reached the limit of my knowledge. When people start mentioning people like Galactics, I'm like, oh, I am out of my depth because I am not a superhero nerd by nature, so I know nothing about anything until it hits the theater.
yeah, and that's fair. But I guess the question is, did you feel it was rushed?
Yeah, I mean, I felt arguably that way about almost every Marvel movie for the last several years. Like, it's like they're in a hurry to get kind of nowhere. So every movie feels rushed, but then I walk out of it or I end it and I say, well, nothing really happened. So what? So why were we in a hurry? Um,
I think what shocked me most was the actor that played the Thing, Ben.
mhm,
That because I've seen him in Andor, I've not watched The Bear, and I was
mhm.
just surprised just how stinking good that guy was. That even with the CGI, they're able to capture it, and just it was
Yeah,
just it was amazing how good of a job he did.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I like, and I'll say I agree. And I think that like there's some really good capturing of vibes in I like again, I'm not a superhero person. I don't like certainly not a comic person, but like I felt like there's some really good vibes with the characters in Supergirl and in what's the other one that I saw recently? I don't remember. I thought, I watched the like the 1 hour Punisher short film that's on
Yeah.
Disney, and I'm like, oh yeah, this has great vibes, and it's dark and whatever, but it feels like the character knows who they are, and I had a good time with it. So
Have you seen
um,
Spider Noir?
no, it's on my list, and I would really like to. That's probably the one that I'm most intrigued by at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably the one I have all the superhero stuff in the last many. I haven't had Disney Plus. We did watch Thunderbolts this year,
Yep.
and then Superman, the other one. But I would say that Spider Noir is a very solid show.
Okay. Well, that's great. I'll have to really invest in it then because
And
I'm very intrigued.
I think what is enjoyable about it, and I think this kind of goes back to where Marvel was going with Captain America, the Winter Soldier, is where they were emulating genre. This is 70s spy fiction. This one was like, no, this is 50s noir or 40s noir. It's it's a Nicolas Cage channeling Humphrey
Yeah.
Bogart. I mean, and all the camera stuff and weird stuff with the cameras
Mm.
and angles. It's absolutely fantastic.
All right. Well, I know what my next few days are going to be because you've sold me on at least giving it a solid go. So,
Yeah, I think in definitely the black and white, though I'd be tempted to, after watching the black and white, go and watch it in color.
mm.
But anyway, yeah. So we really didn't come here just to talk about superheroes. We
No, we got
come
a
here to
good, we
talk
got a
about
topic. Yeah.
the degradation of the music industry. No, no, no,
Yeah.
no.
Uh,
No. So I think you brought up the topic of crowdfund. Was this limited crowdfunding?
yeah, I think that so backstory, right? Like I think there's a culmination that brought to this topic. Kind of two big projects going on at once in my world, right? On one hand, we have the Limithron map collection Kickstarter, which launched yesterday when as of the recording of this podcast, and is like a big project, right? It's $100 average pledge and tiers that take you up to over $400, right? Like that sort of a vibe. And there's a lot of cool stuff in it. I'm a big fan of it, obviously. But then on the other side of things, next week we're gearing up for SideQuest, which is kind of, I think I described it in another show as like my like an accidental baby, um, where or a surprise pregnancy,
There
right?
we go.
Um, like the idea of it wasn't really planned, but it kind of manifested and has become a thing now that I have to manage to take care of, which I'm excited to do. But it's basically a bunch of my favorite creators making very small things to and crowdfunding them all at the same time. So it's things like bookmarks and trifolds and card decks and small zines, low price point for backers, really quick fulfillment, and on the flip side for the creator, you know, not a project that's going to take months and months or a lot of investment of energy slash materials slash money. Um, and so just kind of like the looking at the big project on one side and these very small projects on the other, and thinking about the values of each one of those routes individually. And I was like, oh, and I felt like you would maybe have some thoughts on that too, because you and I have kind of jumped off the deep end in the last couple of years, going from strictly tiny or 48 page zines or smaller to big books with a bunch of creators on them kind of being thrown into the mix as well that have bigger budgets, bigger funding goals. Um, and I thought maybe we could talk about like the value of each one and, some of the maybe the surprises that pop up when you go big and if it's always necessary to go big. Sometimes there is values, I think, in on the small side of things.
Yeah, and I think in general, the way I look at projects, I mean, you should always be doing projects that you have some sort of love for or belief
Yeah.
in, or I mean, be a fan of it to some degree. But I think in general, you know, whether it's small or big, I mean, you can look at it as am I just doing it to break even, or am I doing this to make money? And that can
Why? Yeah.
also, that could cause you to both decide to go big or to keep it small. And it could be both directions too, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's more profitable to be smaller, but also but you want to spend more money because you want it to be a certain way, or other way you may say, I need this Kickstarter to make at least a certain amount of money, therefore I need to go big.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly. And I think there's also and it's gonna sound like I'm negative about it, but I'm not. Um, there's also this idea, especially in crowdfunding right now, that the bigger the better. Like there's this race to the top, race to the most, race to the whatever. And obviously, the more backers you have on your thing, the better. Like that's not wrong. But that doesn't, but I look at some of these projects and like we haven't done this yet, but like I look at some of these projects that are offering, you know, plushies or a million pins or different like accessories or merchandise. And arguably a big part of that is I'm not attracted by those things. But I look at those sorts of things and I say, well, you don't sell them. It doesn't seem like you sell them or after the Kickstarter, or you certainly I don't see them at your booth, or I don't see them, or if I do see them at your booth, you're like heavily discounted. Like it doesn't seem like something that your community wants long form. So in a sense, all these plushies are just padding, right? Um, and they're padding to try to get you to the highest number possible, the highest average pledge possible. And I think that sometimes, like you said, you need to take a step back and say, but why?
Well,
Why?
but this is
Why
interesting.
is that not?
So I've started vending. This is new for me. You could say the same thing about your table, right? You're at a
Hmm.
convention. You spent, we'll say, $200 for a table. You've got your books, and you're looking over next to you, the table next to you, and they've got these either 3D printed kitsch, or this gal has knitted some very wonderful little dragons, and you keep seeing
Yeah,
families go by and those selling, and you're like, hmm. Does
yeah,
it dilute my table, or am I losing an opportunity?
yeah. And yeah, I don't know. Like there's just I have a lot of I guess I'm just flooded with thoughts about and feelings about all of this right now. Um, I think it's easy to get caught up in that sort of a goal of how can we get it bigger. And I think I
And
just
bigger
yeah.
doesn't always mean more profitable. And
Oh,
bigger,
almost never in many
yes,
ways. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because the more things you add, the more complexity you create. And the more complexity you create, the more things that can go wrong.
Yes. Yes, yes. And the bigger you go, often the less of it you can do on your own. So you're hiring outside help to get the rest of the book made or the rest of the illustrations in or whatever. And that costs more money than doing it yourself. Um, like you said, pitfalls, right? Like making an error or mistake on a small project is pretty overcomable, right? Like if you I'm trying to think of like a good example. Like if you accidentally order two few zines, right? And you're like, oh, I got to grab another 50 zines because I didn't order enough. Like, okay, well, you're probably going to pay a little bit more per zine there, but that's way better than getting the quantity wrong on a big overseas order that, maybe.
Yes.
And I'm not even saying you can't fulfill a Kickstarter, but, like as an example, without getting too in the weeds, like with Limithron, we just did a big Kickstarter a couple of years ago, and we placed a big order for all the overseas items, and we tried to say, like, what do we think we're gonna sell in the next 2 years? Let's get 2 years worth of inventory when we place this order. Um, we're running out within 6 months, right, of many things. And while that's exciting because it means that we sold a lot, it also means that we got to order again and
Yeah.
pay for shipping and all of those aspects of things again right away. And if we would have uh, if we would have been more accurate, which I don't know if we could have been, but if we would have been more accurate, then we would have saved a chunk of money in a variety of ways. So
So I worked for Caterpillar. We made uh, heavy equipment from construction to mining to also to gen sets to skid steer loaders. And so you have a long supply chain.
mhm,
So, if you want to deliver a tractor, it has to be ready at the dealer at a certain date. That means then it has to be manufactured before then. The manufacturer has to then plan for the whole year based on what they think they're going to get, from their suppliers who also have to order from their suppliers.
yeah,
And they need to make decisions based on during the fall of the year what they think the following year will be. They have to think out like 18
yeah,
months.
yeah,
It's always wrong.
yeah,
It's the supply chain guy I work for Gray said it's called an estimate, not a it's not an estimate, it's not a schedule. You can't know. You can't plan. So your choice is you have two choices. You are either going to overorder or going to underorder.
yeah,
Which is worse? On one hand, you leave money on the table, and the other hand, you're sitting on excess inventory.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're going to be
yeah,
wrong. It's
yeah.
like,
And yeah, I think there's an argument to where I think there's an argument for both, right? And I think it comes down to I think maybe this is the core of our conversation today, but like it comes down to what are your goals, right? Um, I think if and what do your funds look like? Because I think if we were to do it over again with Limithron, we would definitely order three times as much product
but you
and
know
invoice,
that.
right? But we know it. But even to take the gamble, we would rather sit on it for a little bit longer than run out in 6 months. We would and we could do that. But on the flip side, if you're a creator that is doing a project which the profit from that project is going to fund your next project and so on and so forth, right? If that's the chain that you've built, which is many of us, um, then you can't afford to have way too much inventory sitting in a warehouse. It's way better to under go on the side of under ordering so that you have the funds available to you to invest in the next project.
But I would also posit, I mean, let's say 18 months, things you couldn't predict. Let's say there becomes a extremely popular, scary Caribbean pirate movie that all of a
Yeah,
sudden hits it big again, and all of a
yeah,
sudden your sales go 5x because of,
yeah,
or you could have where that the Strait of Hormuz uh, escalates, prices on fuel goes up, unemployment, the AI bubble pops, all basically discretionary spending held by a large percentage of the people is evaporates, and you
yeah,
never sell all those books. I mean,
yeah,
those are
yeah,
all possibilities that could happen.
yeah,
So it's going to be
exactly.
somewhere in between.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I think that's it's so freaking tricky. Um, I think that one thing that resonates that you said was with profitability on the campaign, right? Like the I find that the zine project is often the best margin on a project that you will have.
Yes.
Not to say the most you will make, but it'll be the best margins that you're likely to see. Now, caveat, um, most zine projects are going to make a few $1,000s, right? On the low end of
Mm.
a few $1,000s. So the question there is, if you're trying to make a living or close to a living on publishing, crowdfunding, blah blah blah, then the only answer if you are only making a few $1,000s on each zine Kickstarter is that you have to do a bunch of them. You have to be extremely efficient and quick because if you're only doing 3 grand a pop,
Yeah.
you got to have 8, 9, 10 of them every year. Um, So that's the appeal of the big project is, oh, I could do one big project that does 40,000
Well, why don't
and
we
then
approach this? Why don't we approach this differently?
yeah,
Let's just start from the beginning. Let's
sure.
start with a single zine, pros and
Yeah.
cons.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So a single zine.
Yeah. Single zine pros. It's it's that what your costs are, and even if it's a small print run, you know that you're going to have good margins even on a small print run.
Yes, you will always, yes, you should generally have, and I think the scope of it is small enough. It doesn't require a team.
Yeah.
A single person could put out a zine on whatever frequency they have the ability to create content.
And I think as an like there's if you want examples of that, I know probably your listeners have plenty of examples, but just as a note, right? Like that is SideQuest on
Yes.
Kickstarter that comes out whatever it is, 14th or whatever. But that is a bunch of basically single people or duos doing a project that they can handle on their own. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's very doable by anybody. Anybody can do a zine.
Yeah.
It can be anywhere from 8 pages to 58 pages or whatever. Maybe 58 is not 60. We'll say divide by four.
52. There you go. Yeah.
52.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, that's what I think what's nice about it is also in general, the expectations, depending on what you're publishing for. I don't want to say the expectations are lower, but I mean, people are much more open-minded about however you want to do it. If you say, you know what, I just want a Xerox machine and use and just write with ink pen and do the whole thing that way, you can do it.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. And I think being able to do it yourself, um, be having the margins. I think the other thing that really appeals to me, and continually appeals to me is the time investment is small enough that I can choose to do that side of a project for systems or what settings that wouldn't otherwise really be viable for me to do, right? Like, um, let me think of if I could give it a good example, like a system neutral thing. Like, I know that usually system neutral stuff doesn't make a lot of money. Um, or, a card-based accessory for an RPG usually isn't a big win. But if I'm inspired and I can keep it simple on the small end of things. I can write something, design something, contribute to that system, to that setting, to that whatever, without it requiring months and months and months of my time. It's harder for me to justify. What's a good example here? What's a good example? We'll just keep it with system neutral because that then I'm not
You know
targeting
anybody?
anybody. Yeah. It's harder to justify saying, "Oh, I want to spend 6 months of my life working on a system neutral thing," which is guaranteed basically to make less money than a Pirate Borg thing or a Shadow Dark thing at the moment, right? That is a hard sell. Oh, 6 months to make less, but maybe I'm willing to say, oh, well, I'm willing to do that for the next couple months though, because this is important to me. And I can spare a couple months to do this like extreme passion, but also extremely niche project.
But you can also just do it. You can cut your cost could be almost zero. You could print it out and fold it and staple it yourself.
Hmm.
I mean, it
Hmm.
can really be to the scale of however you want it to be because it could be I just want to make something for some of my friends, or I want to do something just to hand out at a convention, or I've got an adventure that I'm going to run at
Oh
conventions. When
yeah.
I'm done, I'm going to hand it out to the people who are there. I mean, it doesn't have to be um it really can just be something that speaks to your heart and that you really care about. And the barrier to entry, not just even just margins, but like just the cost itself can be nearly zero, just your time.
I think that's a great point. And it sparked a note for me. So I love giving things out at conventions. I think it's the best business card you can have is not a business card at a convention, right? Something that the average gamer will see value in. And so I try to like once a year do something that's that way. And this year I just got them in. And to kind of to your point, so I did this little like bifold um one shot scenario for Pirate Borg. But it didn't come as a bifold. The printer that I used didn't have that option for this size for a bifold, and so I just ordered them as black and white flyers, double-sided flyers, and then I hand folded all of them. I think I ordered 350 of these, and I think it cost me like I want to say $100 maybe,
Yeah.
right? And what I know because I've seen them posted or seen people talk about them is that somebody will go and stick this on the shelf. And like I love like one of my weird holidays that I get a lot of joy out of is Shark Week every year. And so for the last 2 years, this has been my Pirate Board contribution to Shark Week because it's like I don't really have time to do a big project. I or and even if I wanted to, like Shark Week really isn't like we launched this other big project 2 weeks ago or yesterday, and then Shark Week is in 2 or 3 weeks. I don't really have time to make a zine for Shark Week even. But by allowing to go small, I was able to do something still, and I'm very happy and very excited about it. And I think it'll bring me a ton of joy and maybe a little bit of sales elsewhere to be able to hand 300 of these out at shows over the next few months. So yeah, I don't know. I like that's an example of a tiny project that's a single person that was as cheap as possible. And but there's a huge amount of value that I see in that. And I want to do it practically every year.
Yeah, and if I could, like for Gary's appendix, do 12 issues a year, um, that would not be that hard. I mean, it would be work, definitely. But as far as talking about like profitability and effort and stress, um, yeah, that would could be, but I can't do 12 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say 12, I mean nobody's going to be backing 12 issues of Gary's appendix a year. There's absolutely no way it's going to happen. So I think in some ways, you can with we'll call it the extra margins, but I also say to me, there's, especially once you've done something once and you have a format, it's not overly large, you can replicate it pretty quickly when you get new content.
Yeah.
So, but it's just that it's not feasible if you're looking to make a business out of it to just do one a month. It just,
I'll tell you a great thing that I have found, and I got a good example from somebody else real quick, but like these small projects, sometimes it's even like you don't even have to do a full Kickstarter to get the value, right? Sometimes you do, like that's SideQuest, but Will Tramp did a crowdfunder for These Bloody Sails, which is a Pirate Borg zine earlier this year, right? And he was talking about like what he could do to kind of like get people excited in the pledge manager and like is there a way that he could kind of boost revenue and get make that more of an appealing shopping space and whatever. And so what I encouraged him to do is I'm like, hey, make another like one shot or a collection of one shots and put it on there, put it on your pledge manager for like $4 or $2 or $6, whatever it ends up being, like small price point, digital only, see what happens. Um, and he did. He put, I think it's $4. I think it's a couple of adventures maybe. It's new for the pledge manager. Um, he made like uh a, over $1,000 on it. Um, and I think that like that's an example of a small thing that you got excited about can really still like that's a great profit for him because he was able, he wrote all that, he did the layout, he did everything. It was a lot of work still, but like the margins were insanely good for him on that little project. Um, so you can find even it doesn't always take a full Kickstarter. Sometimes it's just like say, can I graft this small thing onto a bigger thing? Um, and you can get a win that way. We did that with Limithron, a big project here. We really wanted to do metal coins. Like that was a big thing that we wanted to do a couple of years ago. They're expensive to make metal coins at small batches, right? Like it's not cheap. But we decided when we did the Kickstarter, we're doing these big books, we're doing these starter sets, whatever. We're going to offer metal coins from the beginning, but also we're going to build them into almost all of our tiers. Um, so that if you're backing a reward tier, you're almost guaranteed to get the coins. What that did was we sold a enormous amount of coins, which made the unit cost go way down, which made them very affordable for us. Which, if we would have done that as its own small project, it maybe wouldn't have worked out. So this is maybe on the side of like small projects that have a higher cost, but if you can find a way to graft them in, then all of a sudden some of that high cost can get brought
Right, but I
down.
think you're also talking about those kinds of items, especially on the scale that Limithron is. You'll always those will sell forever. Like you almost can't buy. I don't want to say you can't buy too many, but in general, it's like,
Yeah, we knew that like once we could get them out there,
yeah,
yeah, that they'll be desirable, but it's about getting over the barrier of unit cost to where it makes sense. And I think that's maybe an argument, and we haven't quite got there yet, but that's an argument for the big project, right? Is that sometimes it validates or justifies certain types of things that you couldn't otherwise. Um, but what before we do that, like, are there other elements of wins to be had on the small project?
fulfillment is a
Yeah,
snap.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Well, and
you could even if you have I think Will had a really good project, and probably with two people in a morning and afternoon, you can have everything done and mailed off and call it a day.
But that's less about I'll take a stab here from my own experience, but maybe you'll disagree. I think that's less about the size of the funding or the size of the project and more about the variety on offer in the
It
project.
is, but I will say in general, a anytime you can use an envelope, things go by quicker.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
whenever you have
A box.
yeah, a box, you're adding assembly of the box, and then you also add the packaging inside the box to keep things from bouncing around. So and then the taping of the box. So there's a and then but anyway, yeah, in general, if you can do one item, slip it in an envelope, or two items and slip them in an envelope, um, that is very, very, very easy to fulfill. I mean, Will was surprised, I think, how easy it was, and wondering, if he's wondering why people, have, complained. I said, well, you at the bare minimum, you need to be comfortable with using a spreadsheet. If you're not comfortable with using a spreadsheet, then fulfillment is not probably going to be very fun.
And the moment you get above, I'd say six physical SKUs,
Yes,
it becomes it like every SKU you add exponentially increases the time
yes.
required to get everything out the door. And because it adds variety of pledges and all sorts of crazy things. Um, it definitely increases it. The other thing, the other win with a small zine or something like that is media mail, right? Like, and we've talked about this on your podcast before, but just the value of lower cost shipping and not having to worry about all of a sudden it exploding in cost, right? Like media mail doesn't increase super rapidly. And like as far as like the USPS rates don't go nuts usually with media mail. Also, the increase in cost for going up in weight isn't insane, where it
Yes.
can be insane for some of the priority shipping. You can get just, all of a sudden those last couple of ounces bump you up to the next weight category, and what you expected to pay $15 for at shipping is now 22. Like
Yeah.
that's brutal, but that really doesn't happen with media mail. So I think that's the other big value is that you're less likely to get burned on shipping, and it's way less complex in that space.
Yeah, so I think in general, for somebody starting out, that is a very easy way to enter into the publishing of work into this hobby is a zine. Like it is by far scope, price, risk,
Yeah,
effort. it is a very good starting point. And even if you have plans, because I've talked to people who have the like, I want this setting and I want to do this, and I'm like, well, what I would do is start with a scene first. It's
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
and then work your way up.
Now, that's probably a good segue. What's the downside? What can't what is the problem areas for a small project?
So the main issues I see is you're probably not, if you're just doing a single zine, um, you're probably not going to make that much money off of a Kickstarter. That is yeah, you just you can't
It's so hard.
unless yeah, maybe I think there have been some examples. There has been Joel Hines, I think is probably
He's a great
uh
example.
but I don't know honestly, so he has had books afterwards, but as far as zines, I still don't know. He just may be an outlier. I would say in general,
Here's the thing about Joel, and here's the thing about the types of projects like Joel. Like Joel Hines, his big Kickstarters, which I think you would say like Desert Moon of Karth being one of them, that really did incredibly well for a zine project on Kickstarter. Yeah, it did $21,000. I think that was considered a home run at the time, which was like several years ago. Um, I think it inarguably was a huge win for him. And then I think he turned around. Yeah, he turned around and did Abilities Considered Unnatural, which was even bigger, right? Like that one is a zine that did 60 grand almost. And part
yeah.
of that was him figuring out how to get his average pledge up, right? He had a couple of books on offer. He was able to do like a special limited run tier, several things, but like that's insane. 60,000 for a single zine is crazy. Um, Props to him. But what you could also say is that Joel came in with a solid product in the very beginning of the mothership hype. And he was able to ride that wave as one of the first people to do that. And so great product.
Well,
And
he
also,
also surprisingly did it in a way that was, I would say, I won't say anti-mothership, but it was not, it didn't fit within mothership as far as the typical vibe.
yeah, it was a little bit different. It was his own. Yeah. Yeah.
It was more like a space western rather than bleak horror.
Yep. Yep. And you could point towards, I think there's different times in the last few years where you could point towards, I mean, like there was a big surge wave for Morkborg at one point, like a lot of projects funding at a really great level. Um, and not to say that Mothership or Morkborg or OSE or whatever, like the wave maybe has crested, but that doesn't mean you can't do well. It just means that you have to be. It's going to be because you did a great product and you did a great job of getting the word out. And it's extremely unlikely. I would say it isn't going to happen that we're ever going to see a third party Mothership zine do almost 60 grand again. That happened. It's awesome. It will not happen again.
Yeah,
Um,
it was during was it around the pandemic too? I mean, there's a lot of
I
things.
yeah, I don't have that on me, but I no, I do. 2021 is when
Yeah,
he funded that. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I remember there was a Zine Quest 3 when I started. It was like
Hmm.
everything was on fire. It was just like insane the
Yeah.
amount of people passionate for zines.
That's the other thing is that so there's probably an upper cap to what you're going to make. And then also, I think a big thing is like it's hard for the average fan of whatever system to get excited about a zine. There is a zine community, and it is a bigger portion of the mothership community or the OSE community or whatever. Like there is a big substantial part, but there's always going to be a chunk of people that say, "Oh, I only buy the hardcovers," or um, just it's just harder to get
Well, I
the
think it's going
juice
to.
for a small
I
thing than a
I,
big thing.
I think it's going to be based on the property or the if you're basing off of somebody else's. Like for instance, I think Mothership is already biased towards zines.
Hmm.
and that type of community. But if you want to do a digest size zine for 5e, I can't imagine that ever doing well.
I mean, I've done it, and yeah, I mean, it was I've done it several times. And yeah, I mean, they there's a zine community, and that zine community helped us out, and made those projects uh profitable. But I wouldn't choose to do it at this point.
I think
There's
if you
just
were to do, you're better off doing a smaller, like 8.5 by 11
yeah, I would say
staple
so.
product. But as far as like a digest size product, I
Yeah.
think it's very hard because those people are like, because the one thing I was thinking about is like, there's other projects like Vossen or
Hmm.
Forgotten
Forbidden
Realms,
Lands.
Forbidden Lands. Yeah, I mean, there's like, but there's no zine community. I mean, I'm sure there could be
Yeah.
hunger for maybe books, but as far as zines, I don't know that there's really any. So I think it depends on, like, with OSE, it's got because of the OSR. The OSR's got a strong zine
Yeah.
background. So I think, but it's not. But I think what you have is you have properties that are really hot, and then you have those properties. How well do they look at third party products? And then how do they look at zines? And I think
Yeah.
is kind of how
Yeah.
you kind of look at it.
The other thing that I would throw, and I think this maybe is a good segue into the other side of the thing, which is big projects, talking about big projects a little bit. But the other thing that I would say is that um, zines aren't a great avenue for selling other zines. Like a zine Kickstarter isn't the best avenue for selling other zines. Like I think that it's important to have a big project scattered in between your smaller ones because those smaller projects then become fantastic add-ons, and because they're at such a smaller price point, lower price point, they usually sell really well in a bigger as an add-on or as a bundle in a bigger project. And I think you'll having, if you just do the small ones, it's usually that like you don't see the sales on the on past issues or whatever quite as well as when you kind of have a bigger thing to start attaching it to because it asks people to re-put everything into perspective, put pricing into perspective. If you're backing a $20 zine Kickstarter and the add-ons are $20 zines, it make you kind of guess, you have to question every time you pick one up because you're effectively doubling what you thought you were paying. But the moment you are paying for an $80
Right.
Kickstarter and you ask, oh, there's a bunch of $20 zines, you might grab two and not even think about it.
No, I agree. I agree. It's and but I do think that the other positive thing is I think so there's like three things. I would say that one, it's good for starting out. It's good for starting to build a community.
Hmm.
And but also analysis shows that it also, using Kickstarter, um, it is you can kind of do a quote unquote, it doesn't have to be through Kickstarter, but what mine has ended up being is a subscription model.
Hmm.
So Gary's Appendix, really, Kickstarter, it's a subscription, even though I'm doing it on Kickstarter, because
Yeah.
in general it's kind of filtering to most of the same people with some additional people added on and some people falling off. So it's kind of was it. So I think those are three things. So if you want to do something that's like a regular thing and then later on collect it into a book, it works out nice.
Yep.
Um, but I
Yep.
think, and that's the other thing too. Yeah, for a larger project, those do add up. So say you want to build a world, you could do it town by county by country or whatever,
Yep.
and do that.
Yep. 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 So on the bigger side of things, what are and we've talked a lot about I think the negatives of the big project, but what are more of the values of a big project? Um, one that jumps out at me right away is I really enjoy the collaborative experience, and
Yeah.
especially when I know a lot of
Well,
creators.
I think we've got an in between. So we also have ones that jump up to the next level that m may not require collaborators.
Yeah, yeah,
So, like, if you go past the zine and you go into a book, that starts changing equations,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I think too, and also, or because I think the problem is it comes down to when they will go with the larger ones is that, people will pay so much for a zine, in their mind. People generally looking at a book will pay so much for a book, but the amount of effort you put into it, um, there is diminishing returns.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. A 300-page book versus a 30-page zine, 10 times the amount of pages, you're not making 10 times the money.
No, and if you look at somebody like Free League
Hmm.
or Wizards of the Coast, they're able to both buy in bulk to get the per unit cost down,
Hmm.
and that's combined also then with the extreme volume of sales means it's profitable. So
Yeah.
if they're able to buy a book for $1.50 and sell it for 60, that's a pretty big margin, even if they are because also you have development costs. So once you start increasing time and effort and people, your development costs go up.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I think like you gotta have, especially if you're a small creator, you gotta have other reasons for that, for doing the big project, because margins aren't going, and your budget has to increase and your margins are going to decrease usually. So what's the win that you're going for with this? And I do think that like I said, collaboration, and like I want to work with 6 people and one, or 10 people or 20 people that I really like, and this is a way opportunity for us to all kind of throw in together. That's a fun answer. I think also there is an argument for um we'll call it reputation increase. Does that make sense to you, Jeff? Like with doing a bigger project?
Yeah, but I think before we go to that, I think in general, what you're also dealing with is before we get to like even the big ones,
Yeah.
just going up the next level to say a hardcover or soft cover,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or now I'm going to add a map and a source book and
Yeah.
adventure. Even if you do it yourself,
Sure.
it starts becoming the complexity of if you're going outside just doing AZ, now you're having to get maps printed or tokens made or coins made.
Yeah.
It starts to become a greater burden on the person that's managing the project. And I think
Hmm.
that's a level of complexity
Hmm.
that it starts to ramp up. And I think it starts to increase your cost. Now the next level that you're talking about is like, you know what? Let's go big. Let's go Raptor Ruckus. It's like,
Or Dark Devilry, or
yeah.
yeah, yeah, like some
So
of these projects that we've tackled.
so to me the issue, I mean the upside is um so I think the problem with the upside is so the upside that you bring, and I think it has largely to do with the okay, let's talk two different things. So for Gary's appendix, I built up a stable of people over time. So I've had
Hmm.
good people, and some people will roll out and will come back, and I've gotten a number of people known that way. But for Dark Devilry, it's through you and through your connections that we
Mm.
brought in a large stable of people, and you already have worked with these people in the past.
Hmm.
But if it hadn't been for you bringing those people, I would not have been able. I could have grown a group of people, but the growing pains would have probably exceeded the value of it.
Sure, sure.
It's like because there would have been flakes. There would have been people that just aren't good fits. There would have been, and I think even I'm not dealt with managing a group of people, and you've stepped into that role. I don't know that I could have been able to tackle a project of that scale at that time.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely your risk. goes dramatically up, and it's nice to have. I mean, I'm a big proponent, obviously, of building out your community of creators, your peers, building connections, and not just connections, but relationships with people that and especially people that you can rely on. Because yeah, I mean, that opens up a lot of doors that are hard to open otherwise. And it's just a big win.
And I
Uh,
think the thing is that, I mean, because everybody had worked for the most part together, and I would say that everybody is to some degree is a friend of each other.
mhm.
You know, some may be strangers to certain people. It was already an extremely positive community to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I like being in the midst of that. I think that's a big value add for me. Like I don't always have the time to do it, and that's unfortunate. But like I love being in the midst of people who are collaborative and friendly and energized to create towards a shared goal. That's really fun.
Yeah, and so I've noticed that, you know, and I've had the benefit of because you and Will did a lot of the work for the Dark Devilry. And I think that, and also with Daniel Fox asking for certain things, because Daniel has a very he's got a publishing background,
Hmm.
and then as a contributor, he starts asking me about things, and I think that has given me the space for Dark Mythos to be able to up my game as far as what I need to be to providing and directing and leading. But also, but like you said, the community, um, you know, because Daniel asked like for Dark Mythos, why don't we start a Facebook group?
Hmm.
And so, and I didn't really think about that, but it's like there is something that there's people that can work in silos and maybe exchange emails on
Hmm.
occasion to people that are like, hey, I got this going on, or hey, I'm stuck on this, or hey, this is a cool write-up. Can you guys use this in your adventure? Or
Yeah.
whatever that is, it creates an environment of creativity that gets everybody excited.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah, for sure. I would also say, like, with the bigger projects, there is, it's tricky. I'll say this with a caveat. Like, it can take financial stress off you, for a while. I think, in the sense that, if you're doing a bunch of like $2,000, $5,000 projects, if you can find a way to get a 40 grand or 50 grand or 100, whatever that number is, if you can get a bigger one, it can take the financial stress off. However, and I think that's super valuable for many, many people to say like, okay, I'm not worried. This has paid my bills for a while. Huge win. I think that's way better than, project to project, having to launch a project every 60 days to afford rent or whatever. Like that's a huge stress. And I've been there before. Um, the flip side of it is that you're setting a timer that is going to run out faster than you think it's going to run out. And you are responsible. If you do a $60,000 project, you're responsible for $60,000 of the way I look at it, other people's money until you're shipping them the book. And so while you financially might not be as stressed for a while, you have a weight of responsibility stress and a ticking clock stress that you've added, and it's not as easy to get that stuff out the door. And the only real way to mitigate that is something that I think you've done well, and others certainly too, but trying to get as much of the project done ahead of time as possible so that when you flip that hourglass timer at the end of the Kickstarter, that bigger project, that you're not then living under the burden of having a hold of so much of other people's money for 6, 9, 12, 18 months or more. That starts to really wear on you.
So I've got two things that are going for me. One is I do have money in the bank that I can bankroll the writers and artists before it goes to Kickstarter. And
Hmm.
so, that affords me, I don't have that second stress, which would, to me is more stressful, but it's taken me time to kind of build up I guess, a war chest to be able to do it. But on the flip side is I have out-of-pocket costs now.
Hmm.
And so a Kickstarter needs to perform a certain level um, to make that happen. But
Yep.
I think that if you are going with a single zine,
Hmm.
it can be whatever it is. Whatever it is whatever it is, and you can go back and edit and cut out, and you could spend all the time doing and playing with however you want, and a lot of times where I do not know what it needs to look like until I have it in layout. Like
Yeah.
there's things I can't even follow an adventure unless it's in layout. I don't know what it is. Somebody has me a
Sure.
Google document. I don't understand what anything's about. It doesn't make any sense to me, but once I put it in layout, but then, when you have like a group of writers that you're giving direction to, you can't just be saying, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You can't be wasting their time. You can't be wasting, you know, in the end, it's like you also put it in a book, and if things have, you can play around with art to make things work out a certain way, but in general, depends on what you're doing. The amount of words, the section breaks, all that can play hugely into the layout of a book. And those things could push you off into areas you do not want to go. You may
Hmm.
break whatever you intend to do. You may go so far you can no longer do a zine. You may go
Yeah.
so far that you just increased your cost more than you expected, or now you're paying for extra art. I mean, who knows? So what it does require is when you have a lot of people, you got to have a really good idea of what the final price is going to be before you start giving people direction.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's the trickiness. But I think that's also a value in the sense that it requires you to be focused yourself, and kind of have define the parameters of the project, and make some of those decisions maybe earlier on than
So what I've
what you
been
usually do.
forced to do is fake write a book so that I can then put it in layout. So then I can go to the people who are writing saying, okay, I need
Yeah,
between this many words and this many words for this
yeah,
section. This section needs to be between this many words and this many words, so that at least when I go to layout, it'll work out. It won't turn into something where I got an extra half a page I got to figure out how to excise from the text.
yeah.
Because people may think they're doing you a favor by giving you extra words. You're like, well, just cut out whatever you need. They're not doing you a single favor.
No, no,
They're
no,
making your
no.
life miserable.
Yeah,
And so if
yeah.
you can tell them, you know what, well, let's cap it, everybody's life will be better.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, yeah, I don't know. Like I, I feel like that what we've done today is really sell the small project. Um, and I think that that's valuable, but also I think I don't if you're listening to this, the intent is not to tell you don't do a big project. I think it's just to point towards the values of some of the small ones. I think it's inarguable that especially for publishing companies and as you scale your business, you got to go bigger and you got to make more. Like this is most of our chat today has been about what is viable or valuable for you if you're an individual or a really small team, and the value of still trying to do some smaller projects. But the moment you have staff or are trying to become an established publisher, it becomes a necessity to put your foot out there with bigger items, bigger projects, bigger releases. It doesn't all have to be that. There's still room for the small ones. Luke was just asked yesterday on a stream. We're talking a Pirate Borg. Had somebody asked, are we ever going to like compile, stop doing zines and like compile all of our zines that we've released adventure-wise into like an anthology hardcover? And he was like, I no, that's never going to happen. And in fact, we're going to continue to do zines, maybe not heavily, maybe not often, but we're going to continue to do zines because we value that format. And there's a space for them in our company, even if as we're growing and expanding and having bigger projects, there's also room for. I mean, we're still talking about maybe Limithron will be involved in Zine Quest, right? Like the there's still space for even as you grow to look backwards and say, hey, maybe it's time to do another smaller thing.
Well, I think so. I think two things about the bigger projects, and they also fulfillment becomes a much bigger monster. But I think there's two aspects. One is you work your way up to the bigger projects. It's
Hmm.
doable, but you grow as you go, right? And if I were to go from my first Kickstarter to all of a sudden doing a big project, it would have been a terrible, terrible mess.
Sure.
Um, so it may take you years to get to that point, but I think the other thing about a bigger project is not just even the economics, but like if you want you may want to just do a thing,
Hmm.
and for some people, the doing a thing is like Luau Lu is him doing it himself. And that's not necessarily a
Hmm.
big idea for me, but it's like there's things that I see in my head I want to make a reality, and it will not rest until that happens. And the
Sure.
only way to make that
Yeah.
happen is through certain things.
Hmm.
And so I think the bigger projects allow you to do things. And the other thing is, we all have limitations, and some of us are, have, the strengths vary, the degree of strength, weaknesses, degree of weaknesses. But in general, I don't think most people are able to execute well a large project on themselves,
Hmm. Hmm.
just by themselves. And it requires, so like for instance, um, you may love a certain thing, but like some people are better at writing adventures. Some people are writing better at writing, maybe rules text. Other people are good at layout or whatever it may be. So I think the idea is that if you want to produce something big and something of in your mind of what that level of excellence should be, it's going to require more people often.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. 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 Not all of us have all the shared skills. Certainly, like, I mean, I'm really bad at art and I'm really bad at art direction. So, like, the moment that a project needs either one of those things, I need help. And like we all like there's that for everything. So knowing what your weaknesses are, then thinking about those are opportunities then to bring somebody on for the bigger project, but also that's recognizing those weaknesses and saying, can I set aside enough budget to afford to bring this person on
So the
if
other
needed.
thing too, I will say is the bigger you get, I mean, it starts becoming you get to a certain point, you're becoming it's less of a hobby, more of a business. And all the quote unquote fun things about a business start becoming more and more your reality.
Hmm.
And so the number of Kickstarters that I that we do, the number and the size of the Kickstarters has forced me, when I say forced, I could pay somebody, I guess, an account, but there's a lot of activities that have nothing to do with making a game that I'm stuck in the middle of, whether it's counting inventory or whether it's writing contracts, whether it's sending out the W-9s, whatever it may be, it starts, even I have to reconcile my books every week. Otherwise, it becomes overwhelming. So, you know, um, so, you know, it's, and I choose to do that. And that's part of the thing I enjoy in addition, but
Hmm.
just also realize that the complexity does become complex in multiple directions the bigger you go.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Is there anything about this that we haven't hit on yet that you wanted to make sure we did?
Well, I will say that I believe in general that anybody wanting to start publishing things um, can talk to other people who publish things. And I would say this is probably one of a very welcoming and helpful community that is we don't see each other as competition, but
No.
everybody tries to help others wherever they can.
Yeah, yeah. No, I would say 100%. There's probably a million places that you could go to be a part of that community. One of my favorite ones is the zine RPG zine Facebook group. But there's others all over the place. Find people or just honestly reach out to, your favorite creators and hit them up with an email or a DM and ask your questions and they'll be happy to. Usually they're pretty happy to respond and talk you through some of it.
Yeah, and
So,
even at conventions, especially the smaller publishers, let's ask some questions. Just start a conversation. I mean, it's just and there's those of us, especially when there's nobody else around, it can be a very dreary experience of just staring at the wall for hours,
hmm
waiting for somebody to show back up. So I think at conventions you see people um, and ask some questions, and people are more than happy to share.
Yep, exactly, exactly. I think, if you don't mind, Jeff, I think there's kind of a few projects have popped up into my head while we've been talking, not mine, but a few projects of others that are doing side quests that I think are really great examples of this and deserve being highlighted as part of our chat. I might give a couple nods to some of those
Oh,
projects.
sure.
The first one that really stuck into my head as like an interesting one tied to all of this is by Chain Assembly, which is Nick Ribera, um, and it's called Beneath Sacred Ground, um, and it launches next week. It is a I think it's a trifold or a bifold. It's a small book, um, uh, that Nick is doing, but it's tied to his new RPG, Lies by Omission. And I think this is a good example of like a small project that he's really using as a promotional tool for the bigger project that's already funded. He did Lies by Omission on GameFound actually last year, and it's a very cool RPG. One of my favorite, I think it's my favorite RPG to come out last year. It's like Italian horror cinema slash mystery investigation, and he does it really, really, really well, and it's beautiful. So Beneath Sacred Ground is a new scenario for that. Um, so it's really short and small. You can pick up I think you'll be able to pick up the other projects, the other components of that Kickstarter, of that line on his Kickstarter. And I think that's a great move for a small project, validating a small project by saying it's also a new opportunity to get in front of a new audience for something that you've done that's bigger before. So Beneath Sacred Ground is one that I would point people to. And then the other one that really jumped out was one of my good buddies, Austin Martin. He is doing a small trifold for Mythic Bastion Land, which is another big RPG that came out last year. Super cool, gorgeous. Um, it's not Austin's, but it's one that he fell in love with, and it didn't even have a third-party license out yet. But he reached out to the designer and was like, "Can I write an adventure for your thing? Because I'm passionate about it, and there's a space for me to do a small project." Um, and the designer said yes. So this is definitely like a passion project that's small enough to where Austin, he doesn't even know if there's a third party community for Mythic Bastion Land, but he's gonna take a crack at it. And I think it's a beautiful looking trifold for a beautiful looking game. Again, that's a house that ate itself. I think two good examples of great reasons to do a smaller project and I really hope that both of them do well.
Yeah, well, very good. Yep. Is
Uh,
there anything else we need to discuss or?
I mean, I don't think so, really. I mean, in general, your community is awesome and they keep their pulse on Kickstarter pretty well, but I would say that like there's a lot of Pirate Borg and Morkborg and Shadow Dark and indie games coming on SideQuest. We should definitely say go check out all those. I'd love for all of those to get funded as quickly as possible, and I think they're all fantastic. And then I think the other thing is just a reminder. I don't know when you're planning on releasing this, but you've got your own small project, Gary's Appendix, launching,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah,
next
Gary's
week too.
Appendix 11s will be coming out. I think it should be mid-July, and then Dark Mythos will be coming out in the fall. So Shadow Dark
Yeah.
and Lovecraftian goodness.
Yeah. I'm excited about both of those, contributing to both of those. Would love to see both of those on my shelf. So I think we got examples of all the types of projects that we've talked about today coming up very soon. Um, and yeah, just hit Jeff or I up if you wanna chat about it. That'd be great.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining me, Zach.
Hey, thanks, Jeff.